This feels totally and completely strange. Not in a bad way. Things can feel really good, yet also make you kind of uncomfortable. And that's probably a pickup line some of you fellas use for sex with the ladies. And hey, teach their own. But yeah, like this feels good and yet incredibly strange. And, you know, we're not used to the Bulls being incredibly successful, but you know, for context, 4-0, almost 5% of the way through the NBA season, and the Bulls have yet to lose. 4 wins, 0 losses. The last time this happened to start a season for this organization was back in the Dynasty days, the 96-97 season. Which there are probably those of you that have watched this video that weren't even born then. Or you were still crapping your Pampers at that point. Whereas I was in high school. Either way, it was a really, really long time ago. And damn, this feels refreshing. Weird, but refreshing and nice. And as I've talked about in the first couple of games for this Bulls season, sometimes it's very nice to have some good fortune. It's not always just about skill or being better. Timing is everything in some cases. And for the Bulls, facing the Raptors without Pascal Siakam would be another example of that. Hey, injuries are a thing every team has to deal with. Bulls, I'm sure, are going to have their assortment of those throughout the season. They're going to have to figure out a way to get it done. But, you know, it was very fortunate on Monday night they could face the Raptors without having to go against Siakam. And the Bulls coming in with the 3-0 start to the season. And, you know, this has been a fun team to watch so far. Their defensive energy and just their energy in general has been the name of the game. Like, they've had some kind of ups and downs offensively, still, I think, trying to find their rhythm, still figuring out everybody's role. But, you know, defensively, they've pretty consistently brought it. And it's their defense that allows them to win games in different ways that they haven't been able to in previous seasons. That's for sure. And in some ways, it paid off tonight. Now, going into this game, the Bulls got off kind of to a slow start. Obviously, DeMar DeRozan coming back to Toronto. I think it was like for the second time since he was traded away a few years ago to the Spurs in that Kawhi Leonard deal. But DeMar DeRozan, you could tell, clearly wanted to play well tonight. This is home for him in a lot of ways. Even though he's with the Bulls now, Toronto will always have a special place in his heart. It's where he popped his NBA cherry. I totally get it. And he was aggressive to start this game, and he was aggressive throughout the night. He had 10 first-quarter points, which the Bulls needed because they certainly did not get off to a hot start from the field. They were only 8 of 22. Another game where Zach LaVine goes scoreless in the first quarter. This is starting to become a trend and a pattern. And sometimes just because you get away with something doesn't mean that it's not a larger, more overarching concern, because it absolutely is. Now, it is nice to know that this team is not so heavily dependent upon Zach LaVine to have to put up 35 or 40 in order to win. But there are going to be times where they're going to need him to come out of the gate strong and come out of the gate firing and put up 35 or 40. And, you know, you don't want to continue to see your best player going scoreless in the first. But even with all that said, the poor shooting, LaVine doing nothing in terms of as a scorer. He had a couple assists, obviously, in the first quarter. The Bulls still tied at 24 after 1. And then they came out in the second quarter like gangbusters. They absolutely did. Their offense came to life. They scored 37 points in the second quarter, held the Raptors to 27. So you're looking at halftime, they've got a 61-51 lead, and you're feeling pretty good about things. Double-digit lead on the road, already a team that's 3-0. You can understand why a lot of Chicago fans are saying, well, White Sox are done. Bears are cooked. They suck. Blackhawks are a mess. Bulls are all we got. I'm not going to totally understand that, because that's kind of true right now. Vucevic and Ball led the way in the first half with 12 points. They started off the game strongly. DeRozan slowed down a little bit in the second quarter, and he only had 11. But what's really impressive, again, about this from an overall team standpoint and reflective of the way that this team can win games in different methods, different fashions compared to previous years, they had a 10-point lead going into halftime, and Zach LaVine only had 6 of those points. He only had 6 of their 61 points. Like, they're getting contributions from other people. DeRozan, Vucevic, Lonzo Ball. Like, that is nice. It's nice to know that if your top player, if one guy has a bad game, this team still has other ways they can win. They still are capable of winning. And it certainly paid off here. Now, obviously, as we've also seen as a trend, these very slow starts for Zach LaVine. He came out in the third quarter like gangbusters. He had 13 points in the quarter, helped spark the Bulls to, at one point, a 20-point lead. Like, this looked like this was going to be a blowout and a complete runaway. But credit to Toronto, they hung tough, had a 14-6 run to close out the quarter. So the Bulls were able to grow their lead a little bit, and they were up 92-80 after 3, but it felt like Toronto had some life and Toronto still had a chance. And I think when you look early season, it can be a little misleading to say, well, the Bulls are 3-0, yes, but they faced the Pistons twice who didn't have Cade Cunningham, and they faced the Pelicans at home without Zion Williamson. So they played 3 games previously against teams without their best player, and now this is a 4th straight game with the team without their best player. So better to be fortunate than good sometimes, but let's not pretend like everything is rosy or hunky-dory here. And when you look at that third quarter, like that's where, if you really want to believe in this Chicago Bulls team being a championship contender, those are the types of moments and situations where you have to pounce. A championship level team would get that Toronto team down by 20 and then step on their fucking necks and blow them out and put them out of their misery. Sometimes it can be a little harder in today's NBA, I agree, because of the three-point shot. It's a lot easier to shoot yourself out of a game, but also shoot yourself back into the game, even with a large deficit. But right there, when you're up 20 points about midway through the third quarter, you need to go ahead and put them away. Get a 25 or 30-point lead at the end of 3. You could potentially rest your starters, like you give Toronto an absolutely insurmountable deficit to come back from. And the Bulls didn't do that. They allowed them to hang around. And great teams wouldn't do that. The Bulls are a good team, a pretty good team, but they're not a great team yet. And even though they won this game ultimately on the road, the fact that they weren't able to extend that lead and smash the Raptors when they had them against the ropes shows that they're not quite there just yet. Because that fourth quarter certainly became butthole clenching time, didn't it? You all had your sphincter squeezed tight because the Raptors kept coming. Then down the stretch, you had a couple of key Bulls mistakes, turnovers, bad shots, bad decisions. And all of a sudden you turn around and you look and holy shit, there's a few seconds left. And the Raptors are only down 3, and they got a chance to tie this bitch and send it to overtime. And Fred VanVleet got his shot on the right side from 3, and that son of a gun looked good, but it ultimately rimmed out, went off the iron, and the Bulls were able to escape with a 111-108 win. I felt bad for Vucevic in that spot because when he had the defensive switch there and he's stuck on VanVleet, Fred's got him dancing around all over the place, but Vucevic was able to at least recover enough to contend the shot, and that might have made all of the difference. So you sit here now, the Bulls should have been a blowout win. It wasn't, but still did enough to hold off the Raptors, winning 111-108. Now they sit at 4-0 to start the season. OG Anunoby led the Raptors with 22 points. Gary Trent Jr. with 18. VanVleet, who missed the game, potential game-tying 3, had 15. Scotty Barnes was absolutely impressive. He looked outstanding with his 13 points. So it's his energy, his length, his defensive abilities. The Raptors got a really good one there. Precious Achiuwa, you talk about getting some type of worthwhile commodity back in that trade for Kyle Lowry. Yes, you got Dragic, but Achiuwa was the real prize there in the long term. And, he could be a double-double machine for Toronto in the future. He had a double-double in this game, 11 points, 11 rebounds. Really liked his game when he was at Memphis. In some ways, I was more excited about him than I was James Wiseman. Meanwhile, for Chicago, DeMar DeRozan, his return home to Toronto, led the Bulls with 26 points. It was an off shooting night, but he was aggressive, and I really liked that. Sometimes the shots aren't going to fall, but keep attacking the rim, be aggressive, don't back off, get to the foul line, find ways to create opportunities for yourself and others. Zach, based strongly, mostly off of that third quarter breakout, had 22 points. Vucevic had 17 points, and Lonzo Ball with 15. Now you look at this Bulls team and you're saying, okay, now you're 4-0. Now you're really going to start getting into the teeth of the schedule. Was it 12 of the next 13 games are against teams that made the playoffs last year, and the one game that's against a non-playoff team from last year technically was the Golden State Warriors, although you could argue they were in the play-in stuff, so that kind of sort of counts. This is going to be a tough stretch. You're going to find out a lot more about this Bulls team in the next couple of weeks. Now, how should Bulls fans feel right now? Good but realistic. 4-0 is 4-0. They're in first place in the division. In fact, I think first place in the Eastern Conference. Is it reasonable to expect that to last? Probably not. Is this team perfect? Absolutely not. Are there flaws that are going to get exposed potentially as the season goes along? Yes. Should we be concerned a little bit about these slow starts that we're seeing from Levine? At some point, yes, that's going to matter. It hasn't mattered yet, but that doesn't mean that it won't at some point. Should we be concerned about the fact that there's another game and Patrick Williams wasn't a presence at all? Meanwhile, you're watching Scotty Barnes do big things? Oh, fuck yes, absolutely. Because this team is only going to go as far as what they can get out of Patrick Williams. And the early returns in year 2, as I feared, have not been very good. And I don't mean to keep picking on the kid, because it's not a thing about him. It's just, you have to look at the situation, and you look at a guy you took at the top 5. He's becoming very much a background player, and if he's going to be that, you might be better off trading him for a veteran piece that can help you win now, because you don't want to ruin this young man and his trade value. But the next big test for the Bulls is coming up Thursday against the Knicks, and that'll be a test. They better be ready. I don't know about you Bulls fans, but I'm ready! 4-0 is 4-0. It's a celebration, bitches! We can think about the logical shit another time.